Hello, listeners. Welcome to Marie Lives the Horror. This is episode 30 of the series of True Paranormal Ghost Stories. In tonight's episode, a young girl relays some terrifying encounters in her friend's home that is over 120 years old. We also hear a tale of a dark, malicious force that was determined to mark and follow its victims. And we also hear of a paranormal encounter that uniquely had multiple witnesses. Tonight's stories are presented in collaboration with your creepy sister and mine, Miss Creepy Tales. Check out some of her awesome videos at the end of this episode. A link to her channel will be down in the description below. So without further ado, step into my horror chamber as we live the horror together. When I was younger, I lived down the street from a girl named Amy. We were friends for years, and her house always kind of scared me. When we were about 15 or 16, I decided to spend like 4 days sleeping over her house. We experienced nothing more than weird noises that I couldn't explain, and strange whispers the first few nights. But on the 4th night, I really needed some water. I normally never went downstairs alone because her house is over 120 years old. But I really needed a drink, so I sucked it up and went downstairs. The whole way down, I felt like someone was right behind me, watching every move I made. When I made it to the kitchen, the light was on, so it kind of gave me a better feeling. But that was short-lived. I opened the cabinet, got a cup, and closed it. I started to fill up the glass, and the cabinet flew open and a glass went flying out and hit the wall on the other side of the room and shattered. I stood there completely scared out of my mind, and then my fight or flight kicked in. I dropped the cup I was filling in the sink and ran upstairs, skipping a few steps and tripping at the top. It took me a few minutes to calm down and explained what happened. My friend said she heard something shatter, but thought I just dropped something. After a long, much-needed breather and smoking a ciggy out of her window, we snuck back downstairs to look, and there was no broken glass. But the glass I was filling was sitting on the floor under where the glass hit the wall. There was a mark on the wall where the glass hit, and we still can't explain it. We asked her mom and dad, and they said they didn't hear anything, but tried to tell us we both had the same nightmare. But we both knew it was real. We did some research on her house, and apparently 4 people have died there, one of them being only 40 years ago. I never slept over there again, and even in the day, weird stuff would always happen. Many times, things we put next to us on the couch would end up upstairs in her parents' room when we never left the couch or went upstairs, and we were home alone the whole day. Besides things happening at her house, I think maybe bad things just like to follow her around. Once, we were in church, and we were the only ones that saw a man in the back row, all in black. He just sat there the whole time and never moved, never even blinked. He just sat there with a blank stare. We asked everyone, and no one saw anyone wearing black. Later that night, we went back to her house, and we saw him standing across the street. Us, being fearless kids, we ran downstairs, and when we got outside, he was standing further away at the post office, still across the street. We told her mom, but she couldn't see him. Only me and my friend could see this creepy dude wearing nothing but black clothes. I eventually couldn't hang out with her because it seemed like every time we did, weird, unexplainable things would happen. I heard from many of her other friends that they had similar things happen at her house. Random dogs that she didn't own running the halls and disappearing. Babies crying when not a single person near her house has a kid or a baby. Her brother moved out and went crazy because of all the things going bump in the night and day. Her mom and dad refused to admit to anything. They just continued to say it's an old house settling, but that literally has not explained anything that has happened. Even at her birthdays, candles would go out with no wind or fans. Stuffed animals would randomly have missing eyeballs, but then would reappear 20 minutes later. There would be phone calls at all hours of the day and night of just creepy, hardcore breathing. One time, we heard someone say a year, and it was only the words we understood. And that happened to be the year the second person that we researched had died inside the house. She is now raising her kid in the house, and her kid keeps asking her to tell Joe to leave her alone and stop making faces, but she doesn't know anyone named Joe. Her kid will also randomly get caught behind doors that were locked, and her kid isn't tall enough to reach the handle, let alone unlock it with a key she doesn't even have.
So I was staying with my girlfriend at the beginning of the year in a condo she had recently moved into. A month or so of living there went by, and we had always experienced odd occurrences. For example, doors opening on its own, footsteps outside the hallway, and knocks at random places of the house. By the way, we don't have any pets, and me and my girlfriend don't take these things too well. We get pretty scared easily. One day though, it was around 8 p.m. and we were both in one of the rooms, just laying in bed and watching TV. And suddenly, the noises and paranormal occurrences start happening. And once they do, we get really freaked out, especially since it's dark out. So, we eventually came up with the idea to just leave the condo for a while and just drive around since we were that freaked out. Well, an hour or a bit before later, we drive up to a Target since it's one of the few stores nearby that was open. And as we were pulling into the dark side of the parking lot to try and get closer to a parking spot near the entrance, a car is speeding towards us. So my girlfriend, who was driving, moves the car over a bit to let the person speed by without hitting us. And as the person speeds by, me and my girl both look into the car and see a lady seemingly screaming at the both of us. Not in a way where she was mad that we were in her way, but like in an almost sinister way where her mouth was open really wide, as were her eyes. And she was just screaming nonstop in her car while maintaining eye contact with one of the two of us. In fear and almost shock, me and my girlfriend quickly turned towards each other, and I said, "I know you saw that too, right?" She confirmed it to me, and we quickly turned back to look at the car. And what really freaks us out to this day is that there was no car when we looked back. We had our heads turned for no more than 6 to 10 seconds, which was definitely not enough time for that car to turn out of the lot even while speeding. This takes the cake as the weirdest day of my life, and I don't even know what to make out of the car encounter. And we both ended up moving out of that condo recently for personal reasons. But shortly after we did, we found out that a woman who lived there prior to us had died in that condo, which gives us both chills to this day. And again, as I said above, we both have no explanation for the car experience that night. We were just in so much shock afterwards that we just thought it was best to leave it be.
My very first ever paranormal experience happened when I was a kid, 8 years old to be exact. I was spending the night at my best friend's house. She lived up the street, and we were a bit bad. Her mom wasn't home, and we wanted to stay up all night. The condition was, her 6-year-old brother also had to spend the night with us. So he did. Let me give you the layout before I get into the meat of the experience. Her room was at the end of a hall. Just go straight and there's her room. Her brother's room was right next to hers on the left. There were 2 closets in her room on the right side of the room from the door. Between the closet was a large wooden desk. Her bed was against the far left wall, feet pointing at the TV next to the door. We were watching Degrassi with Drake, the OG one. It was late, maybe 2 a.m. I really don't know. I'm guessing because it was a while ago. So we were watching TV, laughing about boys, the show, whatever children giggle about at night. We're laying there giggling, and she abruptly stops laughing and is dead fixed on a figure in her doorway. It floated into the closet that was closest to the door. We were scared shitless. It was a tall, black-robed figure. I could only see a pair of deep-set black eyes, and its hands. Its hands had gray, rotten-looking nails. It was scary. Maybe a half hour later, it came out of the closet and toward us. We had our arms linked, both silently crying, hoping to God it would just leave. It didn't. I watched as this thing plunged its hands into my best friend's chest. I laid, powerless, knowing I was probably next, and I didn't know if my friend was dying from whatever it was doing. I was 8 and scared. I peed the bed, I was so afraid. It plunged its hands into my chest after it was done with my friend, then went into her second closet, and we didn't see it again. It was a very, very early. I remember it was 5 a.m. because we ran to my house. Her brother said it did the same thing to him as it did to us. We pounded on the door. My dad opened it, and all 3 of us were absolutely hysterical. That wasn't the last or only time I've seen it, nor was it the last for my friends. I truly believe it marked us. For what, I don't know. Ever since, I am extremely sensitive to energy. This is 100% true. I'm not making any of it up. It was the scariest thing ever.
This is not fake. This really happened. Last winter, I was home alone this particular night, which is unusual. I live in a duplex. My upstairs neighbors went snow machining up near Fairbanks, Alaska. I live in Anchorage. It was between 3 to 4 a.m. on a Saturday night. My daughter was at a sleepover and my man was at work. It was just me and my two kitties. We were watching TV. I had smoked some trees earlier in the night, and we've lived here for 3.5 years now and have regular hauntings as my landlord's husband died of a sudden burst aneurysm. He's a mischievous one and will turn the TV off if I'm watching something he doesn't like, reality shows mostly. I have seen him move things, but I don't see him a lot, just out of the corner of my eye mostly. But this experience wasn't him. It was something much, much darker. I had the TV on, I had two battery-powered lights on, and my bathroom light in the master's bedroom and the hall light were both on. My cats' names are Scraps and Migo. The bathroom door has sliding mirrors, and it was open, and so was the door to my room. I'm drifting off to sleep, one cat in front and one cat behind me. Scraps was behind me, and Migo was in front of me. Scraps is tall and lean, and he is gray-striped, and Migo is a medium-haired tabby, and he was laying in front of me. All at once, Migo and Scraps jumped up immediately in a defensive position. All the lights went out, including the two battery-powered lights. I lay there in fear as my cats were spiting and growling extremely low at the figure by the bathroom door. Scraps came and got in front of me as if to protect me. We all watched this tall black figure emerge from the bathroom or closet. After a second, it dissolved into darkness as all the lights came back on. I grabbed my cats and ran my ass out of the house. I didn't even put on shoes. My keys were next to me and we dipped. I haven't had any other experiences with that particular entity. Side note, I've always been extremely energy conscious. I'm not a medium or anything like that. I have had a lot of experiences with the paranormal, and I'm just glad I have somewhere to share them.
I'm a 22-year-old female, and my cousin is just a few months younger than me. During our teen years, we were extremely close. My parents were divorced, and I would stay with my dad on weekends. Every weekend, we would both hang out at his house while my dad was out doing other things. I always had strange experiences in that house on my own. There was a lot of evil there. This particular weekend, though, the house wanted to push my cousin out. My cousin and I had been listening to a song together on my phone. It was The Cave by Mumford & Sons. I generally liked the song, but for whatever reason, she was really freaked out by it and thought the song had a creepy vibe. Later on, I ended up somehow losing my phone in the house. We checked everywhere, multiple times. I specifically remember checking the kitchen in depth multiple times, but after a while of searching, my phone was magically placed perfectly in the middle of the kitchen counter, and it was playing The Cave by Mumford & Sons on a low, creepy volume. There was no way it was there before, and I remember being especially creeped out because I hadn't even been playing music on my phone when I lost it. The next day, my cousin woke up before me and decided to take a shower. I woke up to the sound of water and her yelling, saying she needed help. I went into the bathroom to help her and found that one of our pipes had literally burst through the wall and it was spraying water everywhere. We called my dad and let him know what was going on, and a neighbor lent us a shop vac and helped us turn off the water to the house. The house didn't have any problems with plumbing. And when I talked to my cousin, she told me that she didn't do anything that would have broken it. She literally just turned on the shower, and the pipe next to the toilet just bursted and started spraying her super hard with water. After my dad was informed and the water was turned off, he still wasn't going to come back anytime soon. So my cousin and I decided to walk to the gas station to get some fresh air and get some snacks to take back to the house. When we got back, we sat in the living room eating our snacks and hanging out. The living room was near the kitchen, and all of a sudden, we started hearing things loudly move inside the kitchen. We both stopped talking and just stared at each other. Then it started moving again. The house didn't have mice, but either way, the movements were too loud, heavy, and intentional to have been from a mouse. At that point, we both shot up and ran to my room, locked the door, and we started crying. She ended up calling her mom to take her home. Added info. My cousin would also get headaches constantly when she stayed at this house with me. My dad is a very evil man. As the years have gone by, I've realized that he is most likely attached to some sort of evil spirit. He did unspeakable things to me as a child, and his house always felt so dark and heavy. The energy was so thick, you could physically feel it. About a year or two ago, my best friend went with me to that house to collect some of my mail. She came inside to use the bathroom, and we could both feel and somehow even smell the evil in the house. She felt pressure on her chest, trying to force her out of the house. With me, it was dark, angry, and depressing energy, but I had the understanding that it wanted me there for some reason. I think that the house tried to push away the people that have helped me in my life, so that it could keep me there. My dad wasn't there when we went to get the mail, but after we left, and my dad saw that I had been there, he kept trying to harass me to come back. And a whole slew of dark things started happening to me after that. I've now gained the strength to cut him off, and haven't been back to the house since.
Thank you to everyone who enjoyed my previous Reddit post about my experience with living with a demon or poltergeist. A few people in the comments were asking if I've had other paranormal experiences, and I sure do. However, I need to add a trigger warning to this post. I will mention suicide, so if that's something that's triggering you or makes you uncomfortable, I don't recommend you listening to this story. But without further ado, here's the time I saw a full body apparition of my high school teacher. For a bit of backstory, me and my dad's side of the family have always been attuned with spirits and the paranormal. It's affected my grandmother, aunts, uncles, most of my cousins, and of course, my dad and I. Spirits are drawn towards us because it's easy for us to see them and be positively or negatively affected by their presence. My earliest spiritual memory is when I was a kid, seeing and speaking to spirits. Basically, what I'm trying to say is I've seen many full body apparitions in my life, but this experience was by far the most surreal. I was a freshman in high school when this encounter took place. On this day, I got to school much earlier than usual. I got there about 30 minutes before classes started, so I hung out by my locker for a bit. The student population was fairly small, so the entrance to our school was a narrow double-door entryway. During the start of a school day, students and faculty were usually squished together like a can of sardines while trying to enter the building. Anyways, my first class was near the front entrance, and my locker was on the opposite end of the school. While walking to class, I had to push against the flow of people entering the building, all while getting slammed with backpacks and glared at by annoyed upperclassmen. But suddenly, I got a very uneasy feeling. Walking with a crowd of incoming students was my school's art teacher. He was fairly popular with his pupils. He had recently graduated from college, so it was easy to relate to him. Typically, people would chat with him wherever he went, but today, no one was acknowledging him. It was at that moment we locked eyes. He looked startled when I saw him, and his reaction totally caught me off guard. Visually, he looked normal, but in my mind, I saw a dark aura hovering over his head. A sharp chill rushed down my spine that was so intense it was practically painful. I felt weirdly drawn to his energy, and it scared me, like a lot, and I physically had to struggle to break our gaze. And when I did, I practically ran to the classroom. After our first period, it wasn't long before the entire school erupted in chaos. Our art teacher, the one I had seen earlier in the hallway, had never shown up to class. This sparked out controlled rumors, and some of his dedicated pupils had started to panic and cry. A couple of girls were crying in my second period, so I avidly assured them that I had seen him that morning. It made them calm down and feel a bit better, so I promised all my friends and classmates that I had seen him just a little while earlier. But at lunchtime, the news finally broke. The night before, our teacher committed suicide. Students were crying and the school fell silent. But I had seen him. I was confused and frustrated, so I was begging my friends, teachers, and even strangers to listen to me when I said he was okay. People became furious with me, and I was accused of making up lies for attention, and I was shunned by a lot of close friends. I was an insecure 14-year-old, so getting attention was the last thing that I wanted, and I had no reason to lie. However, I would soon find out that I wasn't the only one who had seen him. During lunch, as I was rambling on and on about seeing him, 3 upperclassmen approached me. They all began to collaborate my story, saying, "Yeah, I saw him by the school entryway." "So did I. Me too." Something was off, though, but I'm certain it was him. "Did no one else see him?" And so on. Not only had we all seen him, it was at the same time, in the same location, and we all had the same reaction to his presence.
I went to a rehab facility that was on the grounds of what used to be a residential school. For those who don't know, in North America, the government allowed the apprehension of indigenous children by religious groups in an attempt to assimilate them from their traditional ways. Unfortunately, this resulted in severe neglect, physical, sexual, and emotional abuse that ended in the deaths of thousands of indigenous children. I was not aware of this when I went on my healing journey. I have gone for walks on the grounds and came upon this large, red, imposing building that was not very far away. I could not figure out what it was. It looked old and cold. When I was back inside the rehab building, I had this feeling of being watched when I was alone, but it wasn't like any ghostly experience that I have felt before that usually feels malicious. It felt like a curious presence. I had a room to myself and would get woken up by someone lightly slapping my feet. I would hear feet running away, but I would look around to an empty room. Another night, I briefly saw a little girl in a white gown before she disappeared. This made me want to talk to one of the people who worked there. I wasn't sure they would believe me, but they were all too glad to talk about it. The individual is indigenous, like myself, and he told me the story about the building I saw was once a residential school. He told me the grounds are full of children stuck between worlds. He confessed to me that he likes to put a ball in the gym and watch it on the CCTV camera as it rolls around. I was told not to be afraid of the children because they're just kids who want to play. I talked to other clients who were unnerved by also seeing the little girl in the white gown, and I encouraged them not to be afraid. I would love nothing less than to tear down that building, but I don't know if that would release the children. Anyway, I felt I needed to write this because their story was almost forgotten, and I wanted to let you know they're still there and they mean you no harm. Hello, listeners. Thank you for listening to tonight's episode of True Paranormal Ghost Stories as you live the horror with me. I would like to extend a very special thank you to Miss Creepy Tales for joining me on this episode. Be sure to stop by her channel and check out some of her awesome content. If you have a true ghost story that you would like to submit for this series, please send your story over to my email, marielivesthehorror@gmail.com. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell to keep up with future episodes. Thanks for listening, and as always, I am your host, Marie Lives the Horror.